It was on my 20th birthday that he bought me a crystal ball that cost 38 yuan, yet he paid more than 2,000 yuan in tuition for a junior female student at his school. I only complained a couple of times and he brought up breaking up again. At that moment I really couldn't hold on anymore. Chapter 01. On my 20th birthday I treated everyone to dinner. Amid the noise and cheers I blew out the candles on the cake. Every face in front of me was glowing with excitement. Even Augustine, who was usually serious and reserved, had a faint smile in his eyes. My best friend Celine said, "Time to give presents. Autumn, you know I'm broke, so don't mind that my gift is cheap." I punched her lightly and happily accepted the journal she gave me. The others followed one by one. Since I had reminded them in advance, even the most expensive gift was just a MAC lipstick. After everyone was done, all eyes turned to Augustine. As my boyfriend, he was the second main character of the day. The smile from earlier still lingered at the corner of his lips as he reached out and handed me a bag. Inside was a rough paper box. My expectations instantly dropped. When I opened it, my heart sank straight to the bottom. It was a small crystal ball, something you could tell at a glance had been casually bought from the school convenience store. When I turned it over, the 38 yuan price tag on the base hadn't even been removed. It was like a vicious mockery laughing at me. "Look, this is all you're worth to him." I clenched the crystal ball tightly. The rough edges of the base dug painfully into my palm. I forced a smile. This is my birthday present. He had worked part-time for 2 months over the summer and had already been paid. He had even said before that he would prepare something carefully. Augustine frowned slightly. Under everyone's gaze, a flush of embarrassment spread across his fair face. His fingers hanging at his side curled into fists. He stayed silent, but Elena stood up and said timidly, "Autumn, Augustine knew you like crystals, so he picked this one especially for you. Didn't you just say that no matter how expensive or cheap a gift is, you'd like it?" Augustine glanced at her, gratitude flickering in his eyes. The tight line of his lips relaxed a little. In that instant, grievance and jealousy surged up like a wave of heat. I laughed sarcastically. He buys me a 38 yuan crystal ball but pays 400 yuan of tuition for you. As his girlfriend, don't I even have the right to ask about that? Elena twisted her fingers together, her eyes reddening. "Autumn, I'll pay that money back." Augustine really didn't have any money. He even used his credit card to cover it for me. So it was borrowed money after all. That made it even harder to swallow. My gaze sharpened with anger. "Don't you have parents of your own? Why should my boyfriend be the one paying your tuition?" Elena's face went pale and tears streamed down immediately. Augustine's frown deepened. He grabbed my wrist, his voice icy. "Autumn, apologize to Elena. Not everyone is born with a silver spoon in their mouth like you." My whole body tensed. I tried my best not to cry and let out a soft mocking laugh. "Being born lucky, how is that my fault?" I rarely snapped back so sharply. Augustine was displeased, but he softened his tone a little. "Autumn, birthdays come every year, but tuition is a serious matter. I promise you, once I get my tutoring pay next month, I'll make it up to you." I lowered my gaze to my hand. He was gripping too hard. My right hand had already turned purple from poor circulation. I yanked my hand free and looked straight into his dark eyes. "Augustine, do you really think I'm short on a gift worth a few dozen yuan? What I cared about was that he hadn't put me in the most important place and that his attitude toward Elena was far too intimate. The gap between our family backgrounds had always been his sore spot." That sentence stabbed straight into his swelling pride. The color drained from his face and his eyes seemed to freeze over in an instant. "Autumn, maybe we're just not right for each other. If you want to break up, I won't cling to you." Chapter 02 again. I swallowed all the grievance and anger hard, nodded calmly and said, "Fine. Then let's break up." Augustine looked stunned. Because in the past, as long as he pulled out the breakup card, I would immediately behave myself and stop acting up. In truth, my mental state was already on the verge of collapse. I said I wanted to be alone for a bit and hurriedly rushed out of the private room. The air outside was gloomy and damp, just like my heart at that moment. I wanted to call a cab only to realize I'd left my phone on the sofa. I didn't have any cash on me either. As I hesitated over whether to go back, a voice sounded behind me. "Autumn, let's talk this through." I turned around and saw Augustine. The multicolored neon lights flickered around him, making it impossible for me to clearly see his expression. A tiny sprout of hope popped up in my heart. Is he here, to keep me? Autumn, Elena also hurried out, speaking as she came down the steps. Autumn, don't misunderstand. Augustine and I have known each other since we were kids. I've always just thought of him as an older brother. Bang. Before she could finish, she missed a step and fell to the ground, letting out a cry of pain. Augustine turned back to look at her. Tears shimmered in her eyes as she looked utterly pitiful. Augustine, don't worry about me. I'm fine. He hesitated for a moment, then said to me, Autumn, stay here. Don't move. I'll go check on her. I watched as he jogged over, carefully helped Elena up, then rolled up her pant leg to check her knee. Unconsciously, I thought of that time when I was learning to ride a small electric scooter. I'd accidentally crashed into a rusty railing, scraping a large patch of skin off the top of my foot. It swelled up like a steamed bun. It was night and the campus clinic was already closed. I thought it would be fine to wait until morning. But when Augustine heard about it, he sprinted all the way back from the study hall, talked his way past the strict dorm supervisor, came straight to my dorm, carried me down from the 5th floor and all the way to the school gate to catch a ride. Autumn, this has to be treated as soon as possible. What if it's tetanus? You could die. I don't want you to have even the slightest accident. He had loved me. Maybe he still did. But seeing with my own eyes how he copied that tenderness, something that had once belonged only to me, and gave it to someone else, I couldn't help feeling physically nauseous. I took 2 steps back and turned to leave. At that moment I clearly saw Elena lift her eyes and glance at me. Yet she didn't remind Augustine at all. Instead, she deliberately sucked in a sharp breath in pain. As if to emphasize my situation, the heavens actually decided to make it rain at that very moment. I had no umbrella, no phone, no money. My mood had sunk to rock bottom and I wandered aimlessly through the rain. Just then a Mercedes-Benz G-Class slid to a stop beside me. The window rolled down, revealing Alan's teasing face. Chapter 03. He clearly wasn't nearsighted, yet he wore a pair of flashy gold-rimmed glasses. An unlit cigarette dangled from his mouth as he craned his neck and looked at me with schadenfreude. Well, if it isn't our department's campus belle, Autumn. Why are you soaked like a drowned rat? Where's your oh-so-perfect boyfriend, huh? There was also a girl in the passenger seat, dressed skimpily, half her chest practically spilling out into the open air. She glanced at me and spoke in a sticky, sweet voice. Alan, is this that so-called goddess of yours who's not very bright? Looks like she's been dumped. TSK. Seriously, when luck turns bad you run into every piece of crap imaginable. I was just about to snap back when Alan slapped the back of Billy's head. The smile vanished from his face, replaced by an icy coldness. Shut your filthy mouth. Since when is it your turn to talk about her? Get out. Billy was stunned. Alan, she's rejected you how many times already? You're not still going to be a simp, are you? Most men would have blown up hearing that. But Alan's brain worked differently. He broke into a brilliant grin. Absolutely. I'm more than happy to be her simp. Billy stared at him in disbelief, furious. She opened the door, got out of the car and ran off into the rain. Alan took off his glasses and smiled at me. So my goddess, where to the simp can give you a ride? I didn't really want to get into his car, but Augustine had already turned the corner and was running in my direction. I told myself to treat it like hailing a ride. I'd just pay him double afterward. When the car passed by Augustine, Alan deliberately slowed down, smiling with unmistakable smugness. Augustine, fancy running into you here. I'm in a hurry to drop someone off, otherwise I'd invite you to a late-night snack. When Augustine saw me sitting in the passenger seat, his face went deathly pale. Alan had always been a thorn in his side. Chapter 04. The two of them were famous figures in the computer science department. Augustine was the classic combination of handsome, capable, and tragic. He lost his father at a young age and grew up steady, hard-working, and fiercely self-disciplined. Alan, on the other hand, came from a powerful family. His parents doted on him and he was flamboyant, frivolous, and laid back. When others were attending class, he was sleeping. When others were grinding it out in the library, he was gaming. Yet when finals came around, he would buckle down in the library for half a month and his scores would come out nearly on par with Augustine's. And back then Alan had once pursued me very publicly. For a time Augustine had worried that I might fall for a bad boy like Alan. But I had never been attracted to the cynical careless Alan. I'd always been a pampered little princess. Maybe because of that I was even more drawn to someone like Augustine, driven, restrained and self-controlled. After we got together to put Augustine at ease, I cut off all contact with Alan. I blocked him and I even deliberately avoided occasions where he might be present. Along the way Alan talked non-stop. I had no interest in engaging, so I turned to look out the window. My clothes were soaked and a bit cold. I shivered quietly and before long I felt the temperature inside the car rise. It turned out Alan had turned on the heater. He was wearing a jacket but his forehead was already beaded with sweat. When he noticed me looking at him he raised an eyebrow. So am I more considerate than Augustine or what? I really wanted to slap him to death. During the pandemic the school's management was strict, yet somehow Alan managed it. The flashy Mercedes-Benz G-Class drove me all the way to my dorm building. As I was about to get out he told me to wait. Then he jumped out first and opened the door for me. A goddess deserves a goddess's treatment. How could you open the door yourself? I was a little speechless. Thanks. I'll transfer you the fare on Alipay once I get my phone back. He grinned. Sure. I turned to head upstairs when he called out to me and tossed me a box. Under the dim yellow streetlight by the dorm entrance his smile was dazzling. Autumn, happy 20th birthday. Didn't have time to prepare anything, just take this as your birthday gift. Chapter 05. Back in the dorm I opened the box. Inside was a pack of brightly colored rainbow candy. Judging by the packaging it looked imported. I casually picked one and popped it into my mouth. The sweet flavor melted between my lips and teeth. Not bad. At least it dulled a tiny bit of the bitterness in my heart. More than an hour later my roommates returned one after another, all telling me to take it easy and not dwell on it. Augustine and I had argued many times before. Aside from Celine, no one else really believed we would actually break up. Celine brought my phone back to me. There were no messages from Augustine on WeChat. I transferred Alan 100 yuan via Alipay. He replied almost instantly, generous boss. Let's add each other on WeChat. If you ever need a driver, I'm on call anytime. I refused. The next morning I woke up to find that he'd stolen my energy in Ant Forest and even brutally beat up my virtual chicken. Out of sheer habit, even though I didn't have class that morning, I still showed up at the cafeteria at 7:30. Because that used to be the time I accompanied Augustine for breakfast. Among so many people I spotted Augustine at a glance. As usual, he had already bought breakfast for two. He had even gone out of his way to get it from KFC outside the campus, something he normally couldn't bear to splurge on. The weather had turned cool, yet he was still wearing a washed-out white shirt. His frame was slim but straight. His dark eyes looked at me silently, just like every time before, waiting for me to walk up to him first and smile sweetly. I tugged at the corner of my mouth and walked toward him. The cold line of his lips softened and his eyes brightened, like the sky outside at that moment, slowly painted radiant by the morning glow. As I passed him I quickened my pace, intending to brush past him like a stranger. Augustine's smile froze on his face. He grabbed my wrist, his Adam's apple bobbing heavily. Autumn, are you still angry? This was the first time he had ever lowered his proud head when we were in conflict. I held back the ache in my chest and spoke calmly. Augustine, we've already broken up. You're the one who brought it up. Chapter 06. Augustine tightened his grip, his voice hoarse. Autumn, after a whole night you still haven't adjusted. Elena and I are just like brother and sister. Don't be so petty. And Alan clearly has ulterior motives. Stay away from him. Huh. Such open, shameless double standards. The reproach in his eyes felt like a sheet of plastic pressed over my face, making it hard to breathe. I took 2 steps back, drew a deep breath and pointed at a cup of soy milk on the table beside us. Augustine, my love for you was like this soy milk, once a full cup. Every time you hurt me a little leaked out. Take a guess. How much soy milk do you think is left in this cup now? Augustine didn't believe it. With a stiff face he picked up the cup and gave it a gentle shake. Empty. His face went pale in an instant. I took the cup from him and as I left the cafeteria I casually tossed it into the trash. Without love, life still had to go on. It turned out that as long as I paid a little attention, since Augustine and I weren't even in the same department, we hardly ever ran into each other. Alan bothered me on Alipay for a few days then stopped. That was normal enough. He didn't look like the devoted type anyway. Before he'd only been jumping around because he couldn't swallow being rejected. The weekend came quickly. Celine's schedule ran into trouble, so she asked me to cover a flyer distribution part-time job for her. When I arrived at the mall, I was surprised to see Alan among the part-timers, surrounded by several girls. His expression was calm, his posture relaxed. Occasionally he nodded at the girls who were talking animatedly, his attitude distant and detached. Autumn light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows and fell on him. He carried a steadiness and composure that didn't match his age, so different from the Alan I usually saw that he felt like another person entirely. I stopped. As if sensing it, he looked in my direction, then immediately broke into a delighted smile and called out loudly, "Goddess, what are you doing here too?" Everyone turned to look at me. Great. That serene, peaceful image from just now was definitely my imagination. When I walked over, he snapped his fingers at the girl standing closest to him. "Quick, bring my goddess a cup of tea too." Anyone who didn't know better would have thought he was ordering at a restaurant. The girl shot me a hostile look and left. Alan and I were assigned to the same group, handing out flyers to customers entering the mall through entrance F. Coincidentally, he was also filling in for his dorm's leader. Alan was absurdly enthusiastic and even took over my share of the work. We finished our task quickly. I went to find the supervisor to hand things over. But after walking only a few steps into the mall, I saw Augustine and Elena sitting inside a jewelry store. The bright lights sharpened the lines of Augustine's brows and eyes. He took a pink crystal bracelet from the clerk and fastened it onto the wrist Elena extended toward him. Elena said something, I couldn't hear what. Augustine, usually so aloof, smiled. Even his brows were dyed with warmth. Chapter 07. The scene was blinding and piercing to the heart. Alan saw it too. The warmth in his beautiful eyes froze instantly. He grabbed my wrist and led me into the shop diagonally opposite. "It's just a bracelet." His long fingers slid slowly across the glass display counter before stopping at a gold bracelet. "Let's get this one. It has little bells on it. From now on, whenever my goddess shakes the bell, I'll appear by your side." The bells were delicately designed, unique and genuinely pretty. I actually bought it, over 8,000. I paid for it myself. Before, to protect Augustine's pride, I would never have bought things like this. By sheer coincidence, when we walked out of the store, we ran straight into them. Alan, smiling brightly at my side, greeted them first. "Augustine, what a coincidence. Running into you even here." Augustine looked stunned. The gentle smile at the corner of his mouth cooled into something icy. He shot Alan a hostile look, then strode over to me. "Why are you with him again?" That question instantly ignited my anger. "Who I'm with isn't something I need to report to my ex. Aren't you out shopping with your dear junior too?" Augustine's brows knit together. He stepped forward and reached for my hand again. "Autumn, I came today to buy you." I'd been hurt by his grip too many times. My arm instinctively pulled away. The small bells on the gold bracelet collided, producing a soft jingle. The sound caught Augustine's attention. His gaze dropped to my wrist and his expression changed immediately. He clenched the shopping bag in his hand, veins bulging on the back of it. As if struggling immensely, he swallowed the words that were about to spill out. After a few seconds of silence, he forced a bitter smile. "Your new bracelet, it's very pretty. It suits you." I knew it, his pride was flaring up again. Elena stepped forward, obedient and gentle. "Augustine, let me carry that instead." Augustine looked dazed, letting her take the bag from his hand. Elena looked at me timidly and explained in a soft voice, "Autumn, don't be angry with Augustine. He's been thinking about you nonstop these past few days. I've already taken on 2 part-time jobs. I'll pay the tuition back to Augustine as soon as possible." She looked endlessly aggrieved. "Augustine and I really are just like siblings who grew up together. I can't compare to you in any way. I don't have any improper thoughts at all." Chapter 08. Augustine glanced at her, his tone gentler than it ever was with me. "This has nothing to do with you." That lovey-dovey display was truly nauseating. Alan let out a scoffing laugh and raised an eyebrow, about to speak. I tugged at him. This is my business. I'll handle it myself. He studied me for a moment, then curled his lips slightly, his voice firm yet indulgent. All right. Goddess goes first. I'll always be right behind you, backing you up. I adjusted my breathing and looked at the man who was letting Elena tug at the corner of his clothes. Augustine, I'll only say 2 things. The rest you can judge for yourself. First, this mall is pretty far from our campus. You came all the way here to shop, wasn't it, because she pushed for it? Augustine hesitated and glanced at Elena. Elena looked utterly innocent. I just heard that this place has a wider selection. Lying, I sneered softly. It's because you saw Celine's moments early this morning. You knew I'd be filling in for her part-time job today, and you even liked the post. I had Celine take a screenshot. I pulled up the image. The timestamp clearly showed it was a little after 8 in the morning. I lifted my eyes to Augustine. What time did she suggest coming here to shop? And did she tell you that I'd be working here today? Elena looked flustered and aggrieved. I didn't read the content. I just liked it casually. I raised an eyebrow. So you casually unliked it later too? Elena bit her lip hard, eyes brimming with tears as she looked to Augustine. Augustine. The whole scene was pure visual garbage, one look too many and you'd go blind. I looked away, my voice steady. Didn't have time to prepare anything, just take this as your birthday gift. Chapter 05. Back in the dorm, I opened the box. Inside was a pack of brightly colored rainbow candy. Judging by the packaging, it looked imported. I casually picked one and popped it into my mouth. The sweet flavor melted between my lips and teeth. Not bad. At least it dulled a tiny bit of the bitterness in my heart. More than an hour later, my roommates returned one after another, all telling me to take it easy and not dwell on it. Augustine and I had argued many times before. Aside from Celine, no one else really believed we would actually break up. Celine brought my phone back to me. There were no messages from Augustine on WeChat. I transferred Alan 100 yuan via Alipay. He replied almost instantly, generous boss. Let's add each other on WeChat. If you ever need a driver, I'm on call anytime. I refused. The next morning I woke up to find that he'd stolen my energy in Ant Forest and even brutally beat up my virtual chicken. Out of sheer habit, even though I didn't have class that morning, I still showed up at the cafeteria at 7:30. Because that used to be the time I accompanied Augustine for breakfast. Among so many people, I spotted Augustine at a glance. As usual, he had already bought breakfast for 2, he had even gone out of his way to get it from KFC outside the campus, something he normally couldn't bear to splurge on. The weather had turned cool, yet he was still wearing a washed-out white shirt. His frame was slim but straight. His dark eyes looked at me silently, just like every time before, waiting for me to walk up to him first and smile sweetly. I tugged at the corner of my mouth and walked toward him. The cold line of his lips softened and his eyes brightened, like the sky outside at that moment, slowly painted radiant by the morning glow. As I passed him, I quickened my pace, intending to brush past him like a stranger. Augustine's smile froze on his face. He grabbed my wrist, his Adam's apple bobbing heavily. Autumn, are you still angry? This was the first time he had ever lowered his proud head when we were in conflict. I held back the ache in my chest and spoke calmly. Augustine, we've already broken up. You're the one who brought it up. Chapter 06. Augustine tightened his grip, his voice hoarse. Autumn, after a whole night you still haven't adjusted. Elena and I are just like brother and sister. Don't be so petty. And Alan clearly has ulterior motives. Stay away from him. Huh. Such open, shameless double standards. The reproach in his eyes felt like a sheet of plastic pressed over my face, making it hard to breathe. I took 2 steps back, drew a deep breath, and pointed at a cup of soy milk on the table beside us. Augustine, my love for you was like this soy milk, once a full cup. Every time you hurt me, a little leaked out. Take a guess. How much soy milk do you think is left in this cup now? Augustine didn't believe it. With a stiff face, he picked up the cup and gave it a gentle shake. Empty. His face went pale in an instant. I took the cup from him, and as I left the cafeteria, I casually tossed it into the trash. Without love, life still had to go on. It turned out that as long as I paid a little attention, since Augustine and I weren't even in the same department, we hardly ever ran into each other. Alan bothered me on Alipay for a few days then stopped. That was normal enough. He didn't look like the devoted type anyway. Before he'd only been jumping around because he couldn't swallow being rejected. The weekend came quickly. Celine's schedule ran into trouble, so she asked me to cover a flyer distribution part-time job for her. When I arrived at the mall, I was surprised to see Alan among the part-timers surrounded by several girls. His expression was calm, his posture relaxed. Occasionally he nodded at the girls who were talking animatedly, his attitude distant and detached. Autumn light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows and fell on him. He carried a steadiness and composure that didn't match his age, so different from the Alan I usually saw that he felt like another person entirely. I stopped. As if sensing it, he looked in my direction, then immediately broke into a delighted smile and called out loudly, "Goddess, what are you doing here too?" Everyone turned to look at me. Great. That serene, peaceful image from just now was definitely my imagination. When I walked over, he snapped his fingers at the girl standing closest to him. "Quick, bring my goddess a cup of tea too." Anyone who didn't know better would have thought he was ordering at a restaurant. The girl shot me a hostile look and left. Alan and I were assigned to the same group, handing out flyers to customers entering the mall through entrance F. Coincidentally, he was also filling in for his dorm's leader. Alan was absurdly enthusiastic and even took over my share of the work. We finished our task quickly. I went to find the supervisor to hand things over. But after walking only a few steps into the mall, I saw Augustine and Elena sitting inside a jewelry store. The bright lights sharpened the lines of Augustine's brows and eyes. He took a pink crystal bracelet from the clerk and fastened it onto the wrist Elena extended toward him. Elena said something, I couldn't hear what. Augustine, usually so aloof, smiled. Even his brows were dyed with warmth. Chapter 07. The scene was blinding and piercing to the heart. Alan saw it too. The warmth in his beautiful eyes froze instantly. He grabbed my wrist and led me into the shop diagonally opposite. "It's just a bracelet." His long fingers slid slowly across the glass display counter before stopping at a gold bracelet. "Let's get this one. It has little bells on it. From now on, whenever my goddess shakes the bell, I'll appear by your side." The bells were delicately designed, unique and genuinely pretty. I actually bought it, over 8,000. I paid for it myself. Before, to protect Augustine's pride, I would never have bought things like this. By sheer coincidence, when we walked out of the store, we ran straight into them. Alan, smiling brightly at my side, greeted them first. "Augustine, what a coincidence. Running into you even here." Augustine looked stunned. The gentle smile at the corner of his mouth cooled into something icy. He shot Alan a hostile look, then strode over to me. "Why are you with him again?" That question instantly ignited my anger. "Who I'm with isn't something I need to report to my ex. Aren't you out shopping with your dear Junior too?" Augustine's brows knit together. He stepped forward and reached for my hand again. "Autumn, I came today to buy you." I'd been hurt by his grip too many times. My arm instinctively pulled away. The small bells on the gold bracelet collided, producing a soft jingle. The sound caught Augustine's attention. His gaze dropped to my wrist and his expression changed immediately. He clenched the shopping bag in his hand, veins bulging on the back of it. As if struggling immensely, he swallowed the words that were about to spill out. After a few seconds of silence, he forced a bitter smile. "Your new bracelet, it's very pretty. It suits you." I knew it, his pride was flaring up again. Elena stepped forward, obedient and gentle. "Augustine, let me carry that instead." Augustine looked dazed, letting her take the bag from his hand. Elena looked at me timidly and explained in a soft voice, "Autumn, don't be angry with Augustine. He's been thinking about you nonstop these past few days. I've already taken on 2 part-time jobs. I'll pay the tuition back to Augustine as soon as possible." She looked endlessly aggrieved. "Augustine and I really are just like siblings who grew up together. I can't compare to you in any way. I don't have any improper thoughts at all." Chapter 08. Augustine glanced at her, his tone gentler than it ever was with me. "This has nothing to do with you." That lovey-dovey display was truly nauseating. Alan let out a scoffing laugh and raised an eyebrow, about to speak. I tugged at him. "This is my business. I'll handle it myself." He studied me for a moment, then curled his lips slightly, his voice firm yet indulgent. All right. Goddess goes first. I'll always be right behind you, backing you up. I adjusted my breathing and looked at the man who was letting Elena tug at the corner of his clothes. Augustine, I'll only say 2 things. The rest you can judge for yourself. First, this mall is pretty far from our campus. You came all the way here to shop, wasn't it because she pushed for it? Augustine hesitated and glanced at Elena. Elena looked utterly innocent. I just heard that this place has a wider selection. Lying, I sneered softly. It's because you saw Celine's moments early this morning. You knew I'd be filling in for her part-time job today, and you even liked the post. I had Celine take a screenshot. I pulled up the image. The timestamp clearly showed it was a little after 8 in the morning. I lifted my eyes to Augustine. What time did she suggest coming here to shop? And did she tell you that I'd be working here today? Elena looked flustered and aggrieved. I didn't read the content. I just liked it casually. I raised an eyebrow. So you casually unliked it later too? Elena bit her lip hard, eyes brimming with tears as she looked to Augustine. Augustine. The whole scene was pure visual garbage, one look too many and you'd go blind. I looked away, my voice steady. Second, Augustine, aren't you curious how I found out about the tuition money in the first place? Elena's face went pale. Her voice trembled. You must have asked around, Autumn. You've always wanted to keep tabs on everything about Augustine. I let out a short laugh and tapped open an audio recording. Elena's indistinct voice came through the speaker. Autumn, so Augustine didn't tell you about helping me pay my tuition. Elena's face turned deathly white. She blurted out instinctively, how did you record that your phone was clearly taken by me at the time? Chapter 09. Halfway through her sentence she sensed something was wrong and abruptly shut her mouth. I smiled faintly. You were very cautious, you deliberately borrowed my phone at the time. But Celine was standing not far away and she had her phone with her. Did you forget the 2 of us are from the law school? So all it took was a look from me and Celine started recording. Augustine could hardly believe it. Disappointment filled his face as he questioned Elena. I clearly told you not to say anything. Why did you? Elena twisted her hands tightly together, lifting her tear-streaked face. Her almond-shaped eyes clung to Augustine. Augustine, didn't you say it yourself that we're the ones who belong to the same world? She's not good enough for you. We're the real match. Augustine glanced at me guiltily. A chill spread through my heart. I turned and walked away. Augustine chased after me, reaching out to grab me, but when he met my indifferent gaze his hand slowly fell back down. His voice was hoarse. Autumn, I love you. You know that. I only said that casually. I'm sorry. I didn't know she had those kinds of thoughts. I cut him off. Augustine, do you really think you never noticed her intentions at all? What I cared about was never her desire, it was your ambiguous attitude and your complete lack of boundaries. Augustine's lips turned pale. I didn't believe for a second that he hadn't noticed. He simply wanted the best of both worlds, so he chose to turn a blind eye. I wanted to leave, but Alan gently placed a hand on my shoulder and drew me closer, flashing a dazzling smile. Hold on. This is such an important moment, I should make a contribution too. As he spoke his gaze shifted to Elena. The smile remained on his lips but his eyes were as cold as blades. You think Autumn can't compare to you? Then I really have to clear things up for my goddess. Looks, figure, family background, she leaves you in the dust. Academically, Autumn got into one of the top 3 law schools in our university with a high score. You barely scraped into the literature department. After enrolling, she's won multiple scholarships, became head of the arts division of the student union and even joined the party. And you tried finding tutoring jobs and got rejected by 3 families in a row. The only thing you're better at than her is having no bottom line and a thicker skin. He let out a mocking laugh. But you did get one thing right, you and Augustine really are from the same world. You're both experts at wallowing in self-pity. A perfect match. Alan tightened the hand on my shoulder slightly. Autumn and I wish you eternal love and a lifelong bond. With every sentence he spoke, Elena's face grew uglier. By the end she was shaking with humiliation, her teeth chattering, unable to utter a single word in rebuttal. When I left the mall, Augustine was being tightly held back by a sobbing Elena. The man who had once gently helped her up now looked cold and impatient, all traces of tenderness gone. On the way back while waiting at a red light, Alan turned his head to look at me, his tone sincere. "If you want to cry, go ahead. I even specially prepared a silk handkerchief for you to wipe your tears. The counter staff said it absolutely won't irritate your skin." He really was. I actually did feel like crying earlier. But right now I just wanted to hit him. As if he read my mind, he laughed and leaned his head over. "Go on, don't hold back. If you want to hit me, just do it." I smacked the back of his head. He sucked in a sharp breath and instantly raised his right hand. Was he about to lose his temper? Instead, he gave me a deep look, then put his hand back on the steering wheel, the smile still on his lips. "I'll drive first. When we hit the next red light, you can keep hitting me." He said that, but every time we neared an intersection afterward, I could feel him unconsciously sit up straighter. When he saw it was a green light, he'd relax again. "Looks like you're still afraid of pain." Fear of pain is a physical reaction. Feeling heartache is a psychological one. He turned to look at me, his gaze serious. "Autumn, you hitting me actually makes me really happy." I was speechless. Was he into that kind of thing? He reached out and rubbed my head, the tenderness in his eyes as deep as the sea. "That's how it should be, Autumn. The you I know is full of life. He wasn't worth you losing your smile." Downstairs at the dorm, he opened the car door for me as usual, making sure I had the full goddess treatment. I stepped toward the building. He hesitated, then called out to me anyway. "Autumn, that crystal bracelet Augustine bought today. It was probably meant for you." Chapter 10. Autumn had already arrived. The night wind was cold, blowing my hair into a mess. I stood at the dorm entrance, my face as pale as the harsh white light from the ceiling lamp above my head. I spoke softly. "I know." But he didn't even dare to say it out loud. Is his pride really the only thing in this world that's priceless? And he knew perfectly well that I cared about his relationship with Elena, yet he still took her to pick out a bracelet. That Alan even brought this up surprised me a little. Alan gave me a thumbs up. "As expected of my goddess Autumn. Once you wake up, no one can stand against you." TSK. He could really praise anything. But thinking about it carefully, wasn't he basically saying that when I was in love before, I'd been blind and deaf to everything else? I blocked Augustine on all platforms but added Alan on WeChat. He talked a lot and often popped up beside me out of nowhere, while my replies to him were few and far between. People say the best way to get over a breakup is to start a new relationship. But I felt that jumping into something new before fully processing all those negative emotions would be unfair to the next person. If that was the case, then it was better not to give anyone false hope. Augustine had visibly lost weight. He tried every possible way to corner me, but I never gave him a kind look. He was proud and self-respecting, and he never lowered himself to beg in public. After winter set in, the first heavy snowfall arrived, and I caught a cold from not paying attention. I took sick leave and stayed curled up in the dorm. A little after 10 in the morning, there was a knock on the dorm door. I opened it groggily, only to find Augustine standing outside. It had been nearly half a month since I'd last seen him. He looked even thinner now, his chin covered in stubble bangs nearly hiding his eyes. His whole person looked dispirited and worn down. Chapter 11. When he saw me looking at him, a light flickered on in his dull eyes. His smile carried a hint of ingratiation. "Autumn, I heard you caught a cold, so I came to see you. It's cold at the door, let's go inside and talk." In the freezing weather, his shoulders were dusted with snowflakes, yet sweat glistened on his forehead. I had no idea how he'd managed to persuade the dorm supervisor to let him in. "You haven't had breakfast yet, right? I packed some seafood congee you like. It's still hot." He tried to step into the dorm, but I reached out and blocked the doorway. My voice was calm. "Augustine, I've said this many times. We've already broken up." Maybe I'd been too humble for too long, so he thought he would always have a chance to win me back. The smile on Augustine's face froze. His raised brows drooped, his gaze turning dark and heavy. "I'm sorry. What happened with Elena was my fault. I was out of my mind back then. Autumn, you're the only one I love. I've completely cut things off with her. I only found out recently that you used to secretly top up my meal card all the time. And those student union sponsorships before, they went so smoothly because you stepped in." He pressed his lips together in pain. I'm sorry, I realized it too late. I let out a faint mocking laugh. Yes. All of that was to protect your fragile pride, done quietly behind your back. I really was foolish. Augustine's body shook violently. He lifted his hand, trying to touch my face. Autumn, don't be angry anymore. Forgive me this once. I swear I'll never make the same mistake again. Even now he still thought I was just sulking. I stepped back, avoiding his touch. Augustine, when a couple breaks up, it means that from that point on we're independent individuals with nothing to do with each other. I don't blame you for emotional infidelity. I just ask that you stop pestering me. Don't make me regret ever loving you. The sky outside was overcast, the corridor dimly lit. Augustine stood in the shadow cast by the dorm lights, his eyes bloodshot, his face pale as a ghost. He slowly set down the container of seafood congee in his hands. His Adam's apple bobbed heavily. You're still upset. I'll wait until you calm down, then I'll come find you again. Augustine, I'm from Hunan. I love spicy food and I don't like seafood congee. I only ever drank it before to cater to your tastes. I was willing to change my preferences for love. But I could not give up my dignity and pride for it. And just like you said, we really aren't on the same path. You and Elena might actually be the ones who truly belong together. Augustine left. I stood by the window watching him go. His steps were painfully slow. The snow drifting down from the sky was so light, yet as it fell on him it seemed to bend his back under its weight. Chapter 12. The snow fell heavier and heavier until it completely swallowed his figure. I turned around, about to crawl back into bed, when a buzzing sound suddenly filled the air. It was a drone hovering outside my window with a small banner hanging from it, "For the goddess's eyes only." It was obviously one of Alan's stunts. The drone hovered in place, the buzzing unbearably annoying. I had no choice but to reach out and take the item down. The moment I did, it flipped around, revealing another banner, "Good Goddess. Close the window quickly, watch out for the big bad wolf. The biggest wolf here is probably you." What Alan sent was a steaming hot bowl of rice noodles. My eyes burned instantly. People from Hunan all love rice noodles. In this distant northern city it was hard for me to find them, and I had no idea where he'd managed to get this. After eating the noodles and taking my medicine, I quickly fell asleep again. I dreamed about the time Augustine ran for student council president. At the end of his inauguration speech, he specifically thanked me for my support and help along the way. In the dream, I watched my younger self, cheeks flushed with excitement and shyness, and smiled softly. Yes. I had once loved with my whole heart. Even if I was betrayed, I didn't regret it. Move forward. Autumn, your road will only grow wider. Why bother with men at all? Studying hard and eating well, isn't that way better? Alan brought me food every day. I really couldn't resist the temptation of rice noodles, so I accepted them each time. After I recovered, he asked me to treat him to a meal. That was only fair. He picked the place, a Hunan restaurant. After the meal, I went to the restroom and settled the bill. On my way back, a couple at the next table was arguing loudly. The girl cried as she accused him just because my parents said a few things about you're ending 3 years of us just like that. The guy stood up, clearly irritated. Yes. I'm not good enough for you. Your family has houses and cars, I'm just a poor country boy. You're a rich young lady. Can you stop clinging to me already? The girl, furious, grabbed a cup of boiling hot tea and flung it toward his face. The man ducked. The scalding tea came straight at me. My heart leapt into my throat. If that hit my face, it would be a disaster. Chapter 13. The change happened in an instant. I didn't even have time to dodge when a dark figure suddenly flashed in front of me. Alan, who had been watching the drama with interest just moments ago, moved with unbelievable speed, stepping in front of me in a blur. Splash! The hot water splashed across his neck, instantly reddening a large patch of skin. He sucked in a sharp breath. The girl was terrified. So was I. Alan curved his eyes and smiled at me, then casually pushed another cup of hot tea toward the girl. Go on. This time aim properly. Pour it right on that scumbag's face. After a few seconds of stunned silence, the girl grabbed the man by the collar and dumped the tea straight onto his face. When we left the restaurant, Alan's neck was still red. Don't worry, my skin's thick, he said, stopping in front of me and smiling as he met my worried, guilty gaze. I'm happy to block it for you. Protecting you gives me huge psychological satisfaction. As a goddess you should think this way, this simp getting to protect me is his honor. I was speechless. Could this guy be any more ridiculous? He had spare clothes in his car. While he was changing I turned my head to look outside. He deliberately poked my back with his fingertip. Turn around and take a look. My body is top tier, you'll regret it if you don't. It's free. You really not going to look? I ground my teeth. Shut up or I'll pour another cup on you. It's not like I hadn't seen it before. He and Augustine had both been on the school basketball team. Once during a game I went to cheer for Augustine. In the final seconds Alan sank a three-pointer, turning the tide and sealing the win. All hyped up and showing off, he ripped off his shirt and threw it into the stands. It landed right on my head. The smell of sweat nearly knocked me out. But it also sparked screams everywhere. Those 8-pack abs were no joke. Now the top 3 buttons of his shirt were undone, framing a stretch of wheat-toned solid chest like a mysterious cavern, tempting one to reach out, peel back the fabric and explore. My face warmed. I turned my head away. Button your shirt properly. He clicked his tongue twice and suddenly leaned in. Too close, so close it was like he was pressing his chest right in front of me, forcing me to look. My back pressed tightly against the seat. I instinctively held my breath. I heard him chuckle softly. Autumn, you can totally be bold about craving my body. No need to be shy. Can I? Chapter 14. Was he about to kiss me? No, I raised my voice. If you act like this, I'm getting out of the car. His laughter grew louder. He was too close, so close that I could feel the vibration of his chest resonating through me. I could clearly see his strikingly sharp nose bridge and thick eyelashes. The warm breath he exhaled brushed lightly against my earlobe. It felt like pink waves. The atmosphere inside the car turned strange. I was almost out of breath. He spoke with obvious disappointment. Can't you just help me apply some ointment? So it was just medicine. I squeezed out some white ointment, warmed it in my palm, then gently pressed it against his neck, massaging it slowly a few times. He sucked in a sharp breath, a soft hiss, and a flush spread from his ears to his face. Does it hurt? I asked. No. If it hurts, I'll be gentler. His face turned even redder. He lifted those peach blossom eyes to look at me. Pain bestowed by the goddess, pain and pleasure at the same time. That was on me for taking him seriously. There wasn't a single proper sentence that ever came out of this man's mouth. I rubbed a bit harder. He hissed sharply again. After applying the ointment, I accidentally glanced at his chest. I wasn't sure if it was my imagination, but even his chest muscles seemed tinged with pink. Wasn't this ointment supposed to be cooling and pain-relieving? The heater was on in the car, but wearing only a shirt he'd still get cold. Put your jacket on. He shifted slightly. I'm not cold. But his chest muscles swaying like that were making me a little dizzy. I reached out to grab the jacket resting on his lower abdomen. The goddess commands you, put it on. He looked a bit flustered and reached to block me, but he was too late. At a glance I saw a very obvious change in certain areas. He coughed guiltily, touched his nose, and pulled the jacket back into place. I'm really not cold. Let's head back. Awkwardly enough, I was the one who felt uncomfortable now. I fidgeted with my bag strap and turned to look out the window, giving a soft mm. Just then he leaned over, reached across me, and pulled the seatbelt over, clicking it into place. His amber eyes locked onto mine without blinking. Seatbelt fastened. From now on, the goddess's safety is my responsibility. Probably to ease the earlier awkwardness, he spoke while driving. Autumn, if I'd been disfigured blocking that boiling water for you, do you think I could win Simp of the Year? I shot him a look. More like Idiot Dog of the Year. He didn't mind at all. His eyes were still bright. Doesn't matter. As long as I'm your dog. If I'm your dog, does that mean I get to go home with you? For a split second I genuinely had the urge to buy a leash and tie this idiot up. So, never get close to idiots. Because stupidity is contagious. That night after I showered, I received a WeChat message from Elena, sent from a burner account. It was a photo of Augustine lying on a hotel bed. Caption: Autumn, Augustine is drunk. He keeps calling your name. Please come and see him. Chapter 15. I wiped the dripping water from my hair and replied, sure. Send me the location. She didn't respond again. I knew that little white tea type was just putting on a show. If she genuinely wanted me to go, she would have sent the hotel details and room number right away. She was just waiting for me to refuse so she could show the message to Augustine, no doubt with a layer of flaunting mixed in. I didn't love Augustine anymore, but I wasn't magnanimous enough to wish them happiness either. Still, since the two of them were already at a hotel, an unmarried man and woman alone together, and Augustine had been drinking, whatever was supposed to happen tonight would probably happen. Ugh. I suddenly felt like throwing up. I downed 2 cans of the beer Celine had stashed away and fell asleep as soon as my head hit the pillow. Strangely enough, that night I slept straight through until morning. The stone that had been faintly pressing on my chest felt like it had suddenly been lifted away. I knew it then. This time I had truly and completely let go. Early the next morning I got up for class and discovered Augustine squatting outside the dorm entrance. I almost didn't recognize him. His face was covered in stubble, his coat wrinkled and hanging loosely off him, deep dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept properly for months. "I saw Alan hugging you last night," he said. "Are you two together now?" On the surface I was perfectly calm. Inside I understood immediately. No wonder Alan had suddenly asked me for a hug last night, saying he needed comfort for his injured body and soul. He must have known Augustine was around and done it on purpose just to provoke him. "Autumn, I think, maybe you were right. Elena and I are from the same world. Last night I drank and I let Elena take me to a hotel. But I still couldn't do it." He clutched his head in pain. "All I could think about was you. Other than you, no one else will do." As a matter of fact, I wasn't even sure whether he could do it with me either. We had never crossed that final line before. I looked calmly at the anguished man in front of me and spoke coldly. "If you're sick, go to a hospital. I'm not a doctor." In that moment I actually felt a flicker of pity for Elena. But then I thought again. She knew full well Augustine had a girlfriend and still tried to seduce him. What was there to pity? This outcome was nothing but karma. Augustine was a campus celebrity and news about him spread fast. My roommates told me vividly that Augustine had fallen ill and taken a week off. Elena had rushed to the boys' dorm to pester him, only to be kicked out directly by Augustine. He also resigned as student council president because he couldn't secure a single sponsorship. At that rate, the New Year's gala couldn't go on at all. But none of that had anything to do with me anymore. My mood was calm. I listened as if it were just gossip, something mildly entertaining. This time Augustine seemed to have truly given up. He stopped bothering me, but occasionally had people pass along the CET6 exam materials he'd carefully prepared along with past exam papers for my major that he didn't know where to get. Once he even sent me a movie ticket for a film I'd mentioned before, saying I wanted to see it once it was released. Somehow Alan found out about it. He immediately bought another ticket, shamelessly dragged me to the movie, and even posted photos on his moments. If Augustine ever saw that, he'd probably be furious. Whatever. That night, a little after 10, Alan's dorm leader called me saying something had happened to him and asking me to come over right away. Chapter 16. My heart sank instantly. I didn't have time to clean up, just threw on a coat, went out in my pajama pants and rushed off. The dorm leader hadn't explained things clearly. All the way there my heart was in my throat. I walked faster and faster, even tripping at the school gate. Only when I arrived did I realize it was a dorm gathering. Alan had accidentally drunk too much. He was currently clinging to a huge pillar at the restaurant entrance, refusing to move no matter what. Their dorm leader was a peculiar character. After graduating high school, he'd worked on an assembly line for 3 years, then had an epiphany about studying properly. After repeating a year, he got into our university. He was a few years older than us and much steadier. He was allergic to alcohol, so he hadn't touched a drop. "I've already gotten the others back," he told me. "He's the only one who won't leave." Then he called out to me, "Let him hang on to the pillar for now." "Autumn, are you completely done with Augustine yet?" The dorm leader let out a sigh of relief. "That's good. Then spend more time with Alan. Don't be fooled by how unserious he looks. He's always kept you in his heart. Plenty of girls have chased him. But every time someone confessed, he'd spend half an hour telling them about you. Every girl who liked him knew he had a goddess. Who could put up with that?" I pressed my lips together, my emotions tangled. I felt bad about the things Billy had said back then. When Augustine ran for student council president, Alan was also a candidate. Augustine only won by 1 vote, and that vote was Alan's. He probably saw you working so hard to canvass for Augustine and didn't want you to be heartbroken if he lost. And the time you fainted at the school gate, it was Alan who carried you all the way to the hospital. Augustine knew about it too, he just never told you, did he? And the day you broke up and ran into him, it wasn't a coincidence. He'd been driving circles around the KTV the whole time. That box of candy was something he'd asked someone to bring back from abroad ages ago. He was afraid you wouldn't accept it, so he didn't even dare package it properly. And the day you got together with Augustine, he got drunk and cried all night. The rest of us in the dorm didn't sleep at all because of him. Early the next morning he got up and bought breakfast for the whole dorm. I knew it, he just wanted an excuse to see you in the cafeteria. I remembered that the day after I officially got together with Augustine, I had run into Alan at the cafeteria. He was carrying a big bag of breakfast and smiling at me easily, casually. Back then I'd thought, figures, he was just chasing for fun. Otherwise, if I got together with someone else, he should at least be sad. The dorm leader sighed. I'm not saying you have to accept him. I just want you to understand him a little better. He's always said liking you is his own business, no moral blackmail involved. But he's kept it all bottled up, you never knew how sincere he was. He said a lot. It made me realize that I might never have truly known Alan at all. Drunk Alan was as obedient as a child. If you told him to stay there, he'd cling to the pillar and not move an inch. I looked at his flushed face and slightly unfocused eyes, feeling both annoyed and amused. Why did you drink so much? I'm unhappy, he said pitifully. I got rejected by my goddess. My heart hurts so bad. As he spoke, he pressed a hand to his chest and slowly slid down the pillar. My heart clenched sharply. Last night, just as he wanted, I'd hugged him. He'd taken advantage and said, Autumn, you don't dislike me anymore, right? How about we give it a try, I'll treat you well. But I'd refused. He'd stiffened for a moment, then quickly smiled again. Getting rejected by the goddess is one of life's required courses for a simp. Autumn, don't feel awkward. Girls should learn how to say no. He'd sounded so relaxed then, I really thought he was fine. I never expected. I reached out and took his hand. Come on. I'll take you back. I'm not going, he said stubbornly. I'm waiting for my goddess. My face warmed slightly. I am your goddess. He lifted his misty eyes and looked at me. Liar. My goddess has long hair. After the breakup, to show that I was starting over, I'd cut my hair short. I was silent for a few seconds, then asked softly, if she never comes, will you just keep waiting? Yeah. Then how long are you going to wait? Chapter 17. His eyes lowered, a faint mist gathering on his lashes. The corners of his lips curved upward into a look of pure happiness. I'll wait for a lifetime then. So the simp was only his outer shell, deep devotion was his soul. But I couldn't sort out my own feelings. I couldn't be with him just because I was moved. That would be a desecration of his sincerity. Still, I could try spending more time with him. When I was with Augustine, where to go and how to plan everything was almost always on me. With Alan it was different. He was full of energy and ideas. All I had to do was enjoy myself. He handled all the trivial details. It really was much more relaxing. And he had a car. No squeezing onto buses or subways. Traveling was easier and I had more energy too. After finals, he told me not to rush home. He wanted to drive me to City B next door for a short trip. To show he had no ulterior motives, he even booked 2 separate rooms in advance. It was my first time in City B. As a historic cultural city, its atmosphere was completely different from City A. We arrived in the evening, rested at the hotel overnight, and after breakfast the next morning happily drove out. I'd washed my hair before sleeping the night before. It probably hadn't dried completely because when I woke up one strand stubbornly stuck up. I pressed it down with cold water in the morning, but once it dried, that lock quietly popped back up again. I was using my phone as a mirror, about to tame it, when we stopped at a red light. Alan lifted his hand and ruffled my hair a few times. Morning sunlight streamed in, falling into his eyes, making his amber pupils glow. In that piece of amber I saw myself, brows sharp, eyes smiling. The affection in Alan's gaze was almost overflowing. In the warm winter sun of the north, he said, autumn after winter break we. He hadn't finished when a deafening boom exploded. A massive burst of flames erupted to our front left. Thick smoke billowed, shockwaves roared, explosions sounding one after another. Everything ahead dissolved into smoke and fire. The blast sent debris flying. Chunks of concrete from a collapsing wall slammed violently into the windshield. The noise alone had already left my head buzzing. That impact made the whole car shudder violently. I felt dizzy, my vision going dark. Alan was worse off than I was. His forehead was bleeding profusely. The car door had been crushed inward and couldn't be opened from inside, and running around outside didn't seem any safer than staying put. In the moment before I lost consciousness, I vaguely saw him lean over, pressing both hands tightly over my ears. I didn't know how much time passed before I heard chaotic sounds. Human voices, mixed with an overwhelming ringing. Like thousands of bees swarming around my ears, sharp pain stabbing deep inside. I tried to force my eyes open, but my eyelids were unbearably heavy. Amid the noise, I caught Alan's voice, save her first. We'll rescue her soon. Your injuries are more severe. I'm fine. Save her first. He was crying, his voice shaking badly. She's not moving. She wouldn't have. The rescuers said something else, probably to reassure him, but I couldn't hear clearly. I only caught the last sentence. Don't panic. Judging by your distance from the blast center, there shouldn't be a fatal risk. We'll do everything we can to save your wife. In my haze, I heard Alan rush to say. She's not my wife, but she's the only woman I love. You have to save her. I wanted to speak, to tell them I was fine and to save that idiot Alan first, but no sound came out. I wanted to open my eyes to see how badly he was hurt, but I couldn't lift my lids. As his hoarse voice kept calling Autumn again and again, I slipped back into unconsciousness. I woke up again in a hospital. The moment I opened my eyes, I met Alan's burning gaze. His left arm was in a cast. His face was wrapped in bandages. He looked haggard, eyes sunken, stubble all over his face. He'd always cared about looking cool, he would never normally appear in front of me like this. Seeing me awake, light flared up in his dull eyes. I thought he was about to say something earth-shattering. Instead, he raised 3 fingers. Autumn, tell me, how many is this? 2. I coughed softly a few times, blinked, and asked, who are you? Alan froze for several seconds, then suddenly burst into delighted excitement. I'm your fiancé. My name's Alan. You love me very much, we agreed we'd get married right after graduation. That bastard, trying to take advantage of the situation to trick me. Ignoring his own injuries and drip, he struggled to sit up, pulled open the bedside cabinet, and took out a box. He opened the blue velvet case, revealing a pair of platinum rings. See? We even picked out our rings already. Tiny diamonds at the center reflected dazzling light, but it still couldn't compare to the light in Alan's eyes. That brightness made my eyes sting and my chest feel tight. I parted my lips about to speak, when the ward door suddenly swung open. Augustine rushed in. He lunged to my bedside, trembling hands reaching toward my bandaged forehead. His voice was hoarse. Autumn. I'm sorry. I'm late. Chapter 18. It had been a long time since I'd last seen Augustine. I could barely recognize the man in front of me. He was frighteningly thin, his eyes deeply sunken, cheekbones jutting out, hair long and disheveled. He suddenly dropped to his knees beside my hospital bed. Autumn, I'm sorry. I was too foolish before, my pride was too strong, and I didn't know how to cherish what I had. Every second on the way here was torture. I was terrified something had happened to you. I was afraid I'd regret it for the rest of my life, afraid I wouldn't make it in time to tell you how I feel. The fervor in Augustine's eyes was almost scorching. Autumn, from now on, you'll be the most important thing in my life. You're my queen, my everything. Let's get back together. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the light in Alan's eyes slowly dim. Like a raging fire suddenly doused by a bucket of ice water. My ears were still buzzing. Strangely enough, when I'd been talking to Alan earlier, that ringing hadn't affected me at all. I braced myself against the bed and slowly stood up. Augustine was overjoyed and reached out to support me. Autumn, lie back down first. I shook him off and smiled brightly as I held my hand out to Alan. What are you standing there for? Hurry up and put the ring on your goddess. Alan froze. It took him about 5 seconds to react. Then joy and passion flared in his eyes like wildfire. He took out the ring and tried to slide it onto my finger. He was shaking too badly from excitement. He tried several times and still couldn't get it on. Don't move. I held his hand and helped guide the ring onto my finger. A perfect fit, like it had been custom made. Alan's eyes reddened, his throat tight. He couldn't say a word. Instead, I smiled, lifted my chin, and kissed him. You walked 99 steps. Let me take the last one. Epilogue. After graduating from university, Alan followed me back to South City. Our family backgrounds were well matched, and our parents shared similar values. Both sides were very satisfied with our marriage. While we were preparing for the wedding, Augustine contacted me. His mother had been diagnosed with a serious illness. He asked whether I had a way to contact a certain renowned hospital professor to perform her surgery. I showed the message to Alan. He said sourly, "Your ex has already opened his mouth. It's a matter of life and death, you can't just ignore it." On the day his mother was admitted to the hospital, Alan and I went to visit as classmates. Augustine noticed the wedding ring on my ring finger. He looked dejected and lonely as he congratulated me. When we were leaving, he walked us to the hospital entrance. Alan went to get the car. Standing amid the constant flow of people, Augustine said softly, "Autumn, I'm only truly awake now. I finally understand what I lost." The summer sun was blazing, yet it couldn't light up his ashen eyes. "Yes. You lost the chance to struggle far less in life, and you also lost all of my sincerity." I curved my lips into a smile and waved at him calmly. "The car's here. I'm leaving now. Goodbye, Augustine."